Hey guys, tonight we traveled back to a time before comfort was invented. Picture yourself not in your warm, soft bed, but on a scratchy straw pallet on a damp dirt floor. The only light is a flickering, smoky fire in the center of the room, casting long, dancing shadows on the wattle and daub walls. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, wet earth, and something vaguely like a barn, because the family cow is sleeping about 10 feet away from you. This isn't a camping trip, this is home. And honestly, given the odds, you probably won't survive this experience, so let's just get that out of the way. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first sensation is not of a gentle, sanitized world, but of a sudden, shocking cold. You arrive, gasping, into this smoky, dim-lit space. There are no doctors in crisp, clean scrubs, no beeping machines, no sterile trays of instruments. There is your mother, exhausted and sweating on a pile of rags, and a few other village women, their faces etched with the folk wisdom of generations. One of them, the local midwife, clutches a charm in one hand, muttering a prayer to Saint Margaret, the patron saint of childbirth, while her other hand is, well, let's just say it hasn't been scrubbed with antibacterial soap. This is your welcome to the world. Your first breath is a gamble. Is the air too cold? Is the smoke from the central hearth too thick? You are slick and vulnerable, and the first order of business is getting you cleaned, not with warm water, but likely with a rough bit of linen, maybe dampened with some wine or even urine, believed to have antiseptic properties. Don't worry, they'll save the good wine for drinking. Then comes the swaddling. This isn't the soft, gentle wrap you see in modern baby photos. You are laid on a piece of cloth and bound, tightly, from your neck to your toes with long linen strips. Your arms are pinned to your sides, your legs held perfectly straight. You are, for all intents and purposes, a tiny, human log. The idea, a deeply held belief, is that without this rigid binding, your fragile limbs might grow crooked, or you might scratch your own eyes out in your infantile flailing. It is restrictive, absolute, and your first lesson in a life that will be full of constraints. Now, you lie there, a stiff little bundle in a crude wooden cradle stuffed with moss or straw for padding. The celebration of your birth is muted, laced with a thick, heavy dread. Here is a sobering historical fact for you. Depending on the time and place within this long medieval period, somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of all children will not live to see their 5th birthday. The first year is the most treacherous of all. Your existence is not yet a certainty, it's a probation. Every villager, including your own parents, knows this. They've seen it time and again. A baby, healthy one moment, is gone the next, taken by a sudden fever, a cough that's settled in the chest, or the dreaded summer complaint, diarrhea, which could dehydrate a tiny body in a matter of hours. Because death is such a close neighbor, your soul is a far more immediate concern than your comfort. Within a day, maybe even hours of your birth, you will be baptized. The village priest will be summoned. or you'll be whisked away to the small stone church. This is a frantic, non-negotiable emergency procedure. In the eyes of the church, an unbaptized infant who dies cannot enter heaven. Instead, they are relegated to limbo, a state of eternal separation from God. For your parents, the thought is an unbearable torment. So the cold water is splashed on your head, the Latin words are mumbled over your swaddled body, and your place in the Christian cosmos is secured. Now, if you die with a ticket to the afterlife. It's a grim sort of insurance policy. Historians still argue whether the seemingly distant attitude of medieval parents towards their infants was a genuine lack of affection or a tragic psychological defense mechanism against the near certainty of loss. Did your mother and father look at you, their tiny, helpless child, and intentionally keep their hearts guarded, knowing they would likely have to bury you in the churchyard before the year was out? Or was their love just as fierce as any modern parents, but expressed in a world that demanded a stoic, pragmatic approach to grief? It's a debate we can only view through the cloudy lens of time. What is certain is that your value is immediately calculated in practical terms. A boy means another pair of hands to work the Lord's fields. A girl means another person to spin wool, cook the pottage, and, most importantly, eventually bear more children to keep the cycle going. Your contribution begins at birth. And what about your first meal? We now know the vital importance of colostrum, the mother's first milk, packed with antibodies. But here, in this time, it was often viewed with suspicion, considered stale or unhealthy. Your first taste of the world might instead be a spoonful of honey mixed with water to cleanse your insides, or a pap, a mush of bread pre-chewed by your mother or wet nurse and pushed into your mouth. It's a far cry from a scientifically formulated bottle of milk. It's a quirky and fringe tidbit of the era that something so vital to infant survival was sometimes discarded out of pure superstition. It's like turning down a life-saving medicine in favor of a sugar cookie. Your only job in these first few weeks is to survive, to endure the cold, to fight off invisible germs, to digest the questionable food, and to keep breathing in the smoky air. You are a tiny candle flame in a drafty, dark room, and your family watches and waits to see if you will flicker and die, or if you will somehow, against the odds, keep burning. Somehow, against all the odds stacked against your tiny, fragile body, you survive. You endure that first perilous year, a silent victory marked not by a birthday cake and candles, but by the simple fact that you are still breathing. The tight linen wrappings, that swaddling that made you a helpless log as an infant, are finally loosened and then removed. You can kick your legs, wave your arms, and for the first time, you feel a sense of freedom. But freedom in your world is just another word for a new set of dangers. As you learn to crawl and then to toddle on unsteady legs, your universe is no longer the confines of a wooden cradle. It is the whole of the one-room hovel, which you are now free to explore. And what a hazardous playground it is. There are no plastic covers on the outlets, because there is no electricity. There are no safety gates, no rounded corners on the furniture. There is the open hearth in the center of the floor, a mesmerizing pit of glowing embers and licking flames, with a bubbling pot of something steaming over it. It's the source of warmth and food, and also a source of constant, mortal peril for a curious toddler. Your mother might yell at you to stay back, but she is busy, perpetually busy, grinding grain, or mending clothes. Your safety is your own responsibility. Learn through shouted warnings and, if necessary, a sharp slap. You share this space not just with your parents and perhaps an older sibling, but with the family's most valuable animals, who are often brought inside at night to protect them from thieves and predators. A chicken might wander past, pecking at the dirt floor, or you might have to navigate around the sleeping form of the family pig. This is your reality. The line between human and animal living space is blurry, to say the least. The floor itself is a minefield of splinters, sharp stones, and things you'd rather not think about. You learn very quickly to watch where you put your hands and feet. This isn't neglect, not in your parents' eyes. It is simply life. The world has not been child-proofed for you. You must be world-proofed for it. The modern notion of childhood as a protected, magical time for play, learning, and discovery does not exist here. You are not a child. You are a small adult in training. Your purpose is not to play, but to become useful as quickly as humanly possible. This is a core historical fact of your existence. The work begins almost as soon as you can walk. By the age of 6 or 7, your apprenticeship for a life of labor is in full swing. Your first chores are simple, suited to your small stature. You are sent to gather firewood, a never-ending task essential for cooking and warmth. You shoo the crows away from the precious strips of wheat, your shouts piercing the air. You pull endless weeds from the family's small vegetable garden, your small fingers learning the difference between a turnip top and a thistle. Perhaps your most important job is watching an even younger sibling, who has taken your old place in the cradle. While your parents are out in the fields engaged in the back-breaking work of plowing or harvesting, you, a child of 8, are the designated guardian. You are the one who has to keep your baby brother from crawling into the fire. It's a level of responsibility that would be unimaginable today, but for you, it is normal. Your contributions are not for an allowance, they are for survival. If you fail, the consequences are dire. If the chickens you're supposed to be watching get taken by a fox, that's a critical loss of food and future income. If you spill the bucket of water you've hauled from the village well, that's a long, tiring walk to get more. A little joke your father might make is that you have a job for life, with no chance for promotion and a terrible retirement plan. Of course, you do play. But play is not a separate, scheduled activity. It is squeezed into the moments between chores. And your toys are not brightly colored plastic wonders. Boys might push a wooden block around, pretending it's a plow, or fight mock battles with sticks, practicing for a future that might involve being called to fight for your lord. Girls cuddle dolls made from rags and stuffed with straw, rehearsing for their inevitable future as mothers. You might play a game of knucklebones, using the clean vertebrae of a sheep in a game similar to jacks. A popular, and rather quirky, toy is a pig's bladder, cleaned and inflated to be used as a ball. It's bouncy, it's fun, and it's a reminder that nothing in your world is wasted. Historians still argue whether this early entry into the world of adult work completely crushed the spirit of medieval children, or if it gave them a different kind of agency and competence that modern, sheltered children lack. Are you a deprived soul, or are you a supremely capable 8-year-old who knows how to find edible roots and predict rain from the behavior of birds? Formal education is a fantasy. It's something for the sons of nobles or wealthy merchants, not for you. You will never learn to read or write your own name. Your education is entirely practical, passed down from your parents and the village elders. You learn the names of plants, which ones heal and which ones kill. You learn to read the sky for weather, to mend a fence, to find your way home by the position of the sun. Spiritually, your education comes from the parish priest, who drills you on the Lord's Prayer and the Hail Mary in Latin, a language you do not understand. You learn the stories of the saints and the terrifying consequences of sin through the vivid, often gruesome, paintings and carvings in the village church. Your mind is filled not with literature or science, but with folklore, superstition, and a deep, abiding fear of God's judgment. And if you disobey, if you shirk your duties or talk back, discipline is swift and physical. The maxim, spare the rod, spoil the child, is applied literally and frequently. It's the only parenting guide they have. By the time you are 12, any semblance of a protected childhood is long gone. You are now expected to take on a full share of the adult workload. You are out in the fields from sunup to sundown with your father, or running the household and spinning endlessly with your mother. Your body, still growing, aches with a weariness that feels ancient. Your hands are already calloused. The brief, fleeting window of your youth, that short period of being a little adult, is over. You are now, simply, an adult, trapped in a slightly smaller body, facing a future that looks identical to today, a long, straight road of unending toil. Your world is small, and the center of it, the place you return to every night, is not a house in any sense you might understand. Forget about curb appeal, forget about separate bedrooms, and you can definitely forget about indoor plumbing. Your home is a hovel, a hut, a crook house. Its primary function is not comfort, but basic shelter from the worst of the wind and rain. It is less a home and more a human-sized nest, woven together from the mud and sticks of the surrounding landscape. From the outside, it looks almost organic, as if it sprouted from the earth. The frame is made of 2 or more large, curved timbers, crooks, that rise from the ground to meet at the peak of the roof, forming the basic A-frame of the structure. This is a common and ancient building style. The walls in between this timber skeleton aren't made of brick or stone. That's for the church or the Lord's manor. Your walls are wattle and daub. This is a historical fact of medieval construction. A lattice of woven branches and twigs, the wattle, is packed and smeared with daub, a delightful concoction of wet clay, soil, straw, and animal dung. It's the ultimate DIY, eco-friendly building material, but it's constantly crumbling, cracking, and in need of patching. The roof is a thick, heavy cap of thatch, made from reeds or straw. It is a decent job of keeping the rain out, at least when it's new. But it is also a cozy and inviting home for mice, rats, and a whole universe of insects. Step inside, and your eyes need a long moment to adjust. The first thing you notice is the darkness. Glass is an unimaginable luxury. Windows, if you can call them that, are just small, square holes cut into the walls. They might have a wooden shutter you can close at night, or perhaps a piece of greased parchment or scraped animal horn stretched across, which lets in a weak, murky, yellowish light. Most of the time, they are just open holes, letting in the light but also the cold, the wind, the rain, and every insect that happens to be flying by. The main source of light and life is the open hearth in the center of the dirt floor. There is no chimney. Chimneys are a later invention, and for the wealthy. The smoke from your fire simply drifts upwards, lazily, finding its own way out through the porous thatch of the roof. The result is a perpetual, stinging haze that blackens the rafters and everything else. You get used to your eyes constantly watering. It's not a design flaw, it's a feature. The floor beneath your feet is simply the earth itself, packed down by generations of use. It is uneven, cold, and permanently damp. In a futile attempt to make it more pleasant, your family might strew it with rushes or straw. And here we find a quirky, and frankly disgusting, little tidbit of medieval life. These floor coverings weren't changed very often. When the top layer got too saturated with spilled ale, discarded food scraps, animal droppings, and all manner of filth, the solution wasn't to clean it out. It was just to throw a fresh layer of rushes on top. This created a layered, composting mess that could be inches thick, with the oldest, most putrid material festering at the bottom. A famous scholar of the late medieval period, Erasmus, complained bitterly about these floors, describing them as a vile collection of phlegm, vomit, the urine of dogs and men, spilled beer, and fish bones. Home sweet home. The space is one single room. All of life's activities happen here. You eat here. You sleep here. Work is done here. Mending tools, spinning wool. And you are not alone. Remember the animals? At night, the family's most precious assets, the cow, maybe a couple of sheep or the pig, are brought inside to share the space. They are your family's insurance policy against starvation, and it's safer to have them under your own roof than in a shed where they could be stolen or killed by a wolf. Their body heat adds a bit of warmth to the chilly hut, a sort of low-tech central heating system. The downside, of course, is the smell. The rich, earthy aroma of manure is a permanent part of your home's atmosphere, mingling with the wood smoke, the smell of unwashed human bodies, and the simmering pottage over the fire. It's an olfactory signature you'll never forget. Furniture is sparse and brutally functional. You might have a rough-hewn wooden chest where the family's few linens and woolen clothes are stored. A simple trestle table, a few planks on legs, can be set up for meals and then quickly dismantled and put against a wall to make space. You have no individual plates. You eat from a hollowed-out bowl, perhaps sharing with a sibling, or you use a trencher, a thick slice of old, hard bread that acts as an edible plate, soaking up the juices from your stew. You might eat the trencher at the end of the meal if you're still hungry, or you might toss it to the dogs. It's a very efficient system with no washing up, which is good, because you don't own any soap. This complete and total lack of personal space is absolute. You are never, ever alone. Every conversation is public. Every moment is shared. Historians still argue whether the concept of privacy as we understand it even existed as a psychological need for medieval peasants, or if the communal nature of their entire existence made solitude an alien and undesirable state. Perhaps the constant presence of others wasn't oppressive, but reassuring, a buffer against the terrifying darkness and silence of the world outside your thin, daub walls. When night falls, the family doesn't retire to separate bedrooms. You all sleep together on a single, large pallet on the floor. It's a sack filled with straw or leaves, and it's probably crawling with fleas and lice. You huddle together under one or two heavy, scratchy woolen blankets, pooling your body heat to fight off the damp chill that radiates from the earth. Sleep is a jumble of tangled limbs, the sounds of your father's snores, your mother's cough, and the soft, rhythmic chewing of the cow just a few feet away. This is your sanctuary, a dark, smoky, crowded, and foul-smelling room, shared with animals that you call home. The day does not begin with the gentle beeping of an alarm clock, nor the luxury of hitting a snooze button. You are woken by the first, faint gray light filtering through the cracks in your wattle and daub walls, or perhaps by the enthusiastic crowing of a rooster who lives just outside, or inside, your hovel. There is no lingering. The moment there is enough light to see, the day's work begins. You roll off your straw pallet, every muscle in your young body already aching with a familiar, deep-set weariness. You splash your face with a bit of frigid water from a wooden bucket, pull on the same coarse tunic you probably slept in, and choke down a piece of hard, dark bread. Your life is not measured by the clock or the calendar week. It is governed by a far more powerful and unforgiving master, the sun and the soil. Your entire year is a script written by the seasons, an endless cycle of toil that has remained unchanged for generations. In the spring, as the ground finally thaws from the winter's grip, a wave of frantic activity sweeps over the village. The primary task is plowing. The plow itself is a heavy, clumsy beast of wood and iron, pulled by a team of slow, plodding oxen. As a youth, you might not have the strength to guide the plowshare, but you have a role: to walk alongside the oxen, goading them with a long stick, your voice shouting encouragement and commands, trying to keep the furrow straight. It's cold, muddy work, and by the end of the day, you are caked in mud and exhausted. After the plowing comes the sowing. You walk the newly turned earth with a bag of precious seeds, wheat, rye, barley, and scatter them by hand with a practiced flick of the wrist. Every single grain is a promise of food for the coming year, and you cannot afford to be wasteful. This is also the hungry gap, the cruelest part of spring when last year's grain stores are nearly empty, and the new crops are just tiny green shoots. Your meals, already meager, become even smaller. Then comes summer, and with it, the tyranny of the long sun. The days stretch out, and so does the work. There are no summer holidays here, no leisurely breaks. Your summer vacation consists of endless weeding in the bean and pea fields under a hot, unforgiving sun, your back bent for hours on end. The greatest task of the summer is haymaking. The Lord's meadows, and your own small strips of land, must be mown to provide fodder for the livestock through the coming winter. You learn to swing a scythe, a tool that is both elegant and deadly, in a rhythmic motion that you must sustain all day. The smell of cut grass and wildflowers fills the air, but there is little time to appreciate it. You are in a race against the weather, praying the rain holds off long enough for the hay to dry before it can be raked and stacked. Here is a mainstream fact that dictates your entire agricultural life. You operate on a three-field system. The village's arable land is divided into 3 enormous fields. In any given year, one field is planted in the autumn with wheat or rye. The second is planted in the spring with crops like beans, peas, or oats. And the third is left fallow, plowed but unplanted, to allow the soil to rest and recover its nutrients. Your family doesn't own a neat, square plot of land. Instead, you hold a number of scattered strips in each of these massive fields. This system is a clever way to mitigate risk and improve yields, but it also means your work is spread out all over the manor. It's a very, very long commute on foot. A joke among you and the other village youths is that you've walked far enough in the fields to have visited Rome and back. Autumn is a season of pure, controlled panic. It is harvest time, the frantic culmination of the entire year's labor. Every able-bodied person in the village, from the youngest children to the oldest and most stooped-over elders, is in the fields from before the sun rises until well after it has set. You work with a short, curved sickle, grabbing handfuls of grain stalks and slicing them, over and over and over. Your muscles scream, your hands are raw and blistered, but you cannot stop. A week of rain, a heavy wind, or a sudden hailstorm could shatter the crop and spell starvation for the winter. The agricultural calendar you follow is marked by religious festivals, a quirky tidbit of your time. You know the harvest must be completed by Michaelmas, the feast day of Saint Michael on September 29th. These saints' days are not just holidays. They are your unmovable deadlines, dictated by God and nature. Once the grain is cut and bundled into sheaves, it is hauled to a barn to be threshed, beaten with a wooden flail to separate the precious grain from the stalk and chaff. It's dusty, monotonous, and utterly exhausting work. Winter, you might think, would be a time of rest. You would be wrong. It is simply a different kind of labor. The unrelenting cold and short days drive the work indoors. For the men, it is a time for mending tools, for fixing the wattle and daub on the hovel, and for the crucial, endless task of chopping firewood to keep the hearth burning. For you and the other women of the household, the work is even more repetitive. Hours upon hours are spent at the drop spindle, or, if your family is fortunate, a simple spinning wheel, turning raw wool or flax into thread. This thread will then be woven into the rough cloth needed for your family's clothing. You are also responsible for preserving food, brewing the weak, watery ale that is safer to drink than water, and tending to the animals. Your downtime is a myth. It's just work that can be done while sitting down. Throughout all this, you must remember that a huge portion of this effort isn't even for you. As a serf bound to the land, you owe labor to your Lord. Several days a week, you must work not on your own family's strips of land, but on the Lord's private fields, His domain. Plowing, sowing, and harvesting His crops takes precedence over your own. The best of the produce, the fattest livestock, the finest grain, it all goes to the manor house. You get the leftovers. Historians still argue whether the medieval peasant felt an intrinsic, almost spiritual connection to the land and the rhythm of the seasons, or if they viewed it simply as a relentless, soul-crushing tyrant from which there was no escape. Is there a simple, profound beauty in this life, so tied to the living earth? Or is it just a cage, built of mud and sweat? As you finally stumble back into your hovel at the end of the day and collapse onto your pallet, too tired to even speak, you probably know your own answer. All the work you do, from sunup to sundown, that relentless grind dictated by the seasons, requires fuel. But you do not eat to delight your palate. You do not ponder what you're in the mood for. You eat what you can grow, what you can forage, and what the Lord hasn't taken. Your diet is a testament to monotony, a rotation of 2 or 3 core items designed for one purpose only. to give you just enough energy to get up and do it all again tomorrow. Forget any images you have of medieval feasts with roasted swans and mountains of pies. Your plate is a very different and very humble reality. The absolute center of your world, the staff of your life, is bread. This is the historical fact that underpins your entire existence. You live on a foundation of carbohydrates. Bread makes up the vast majority of your caloric intake, perhaps as much as 80%. But this is not the light, airy, white bread of the wealthy. The Lord in his manner eats manchet, a bread made from finely sifted wheat flour, a pale and fluffy symbol of his status. You will likely go your entire life without tasting it. Your bread is known as maslin bread. It's a dark, dense, and heavy loaf made from a mixture of whatever grains you grow, usually wheat mixed with rye or barley. It's coarse and gritty, as the millstones used to grind the flour often leave behind bits of sand and stone. It's so tough you sometimes have to dunk it into your pottage or ale just to make it chewable. Often, you don't even have an oven in your hovel. You must take your dough to the Lord's communal bakehouse and pay a fee for its use. A fee paid in precious flour, of course. It's just one more small way the system ensures you stay exactly where you are, bubbling away constantly in a single large pot over the central hearth is the second pillar of your diet, pottage. This is less a specific recipe and more a perpetual stew. It is the repository for anything and everything that can be boiled. Its base is oats or barley, cooked in water until it forms a thick, porridgey gruel. Into this pot goes whatever vegetables are available from the small garden patch next to your hovel. Onions, leeks, and cabbage are the mainstays. In season, you might add peas, beans, or turnips. You can think of it as a kind of infinity stew. Whatever is left at the end of the day stays in the pot, and the next day, more water and new ingredients are simply added on top. It's efficient. It's also incredibly bland. Spices like pepper or cinnamon are fantastically expensive, items you might hear about but will never see. Even salt, a crucial preservative, is a carefully rationed commodity. A common joke, whispered when no one important is listening, is that you can tell the day of the week by the taste of the pottage. What about protein? Meat is a rare and sacred luxury. The family cow is far too valuable for its milk and its strength in the fields to be slaughtered for meat. Your chickens provide precious eggs, which are a vital source of protein and income. The most significant meat event of the year is the slaughter of the family pig, which typically happens in late autumn, around the feast of St. Martin or Martinmas. This is a time of rare abundance. The pork is carefully salted and smoked to create bacon and ham that, with luck, will last through the lean months of winter. Every single part of the pig is used. The organs are eaten immediately, the intestines used for sausage casings, the blood for black pudding, the fat rendered into lard, and the bristles used for brushes. Nothing is wasted. You might fantasize about a juicy deer steak or a rabbit stew, but the forests and the animals within them belong to the Lord. Poaching is a serious crime, with punishments ranging from crippling fines to having a hand chopped off. A rabbit isn't worth that risk. Your diet is heavily supplemented by what you can find. Foraging is not a hobby. It is a critical survival skill. You know which wild greens are good in pottage, where to find hazelnuts and walnuts, and which roots can be dug up and boiled. In the summer and autumn, you gather wild berries, apples, and pears, providing a welcome burst of sweetness in an otherwise savory and bland diet. And then there is the church. The church calendar exerts a powerful control over your stomach. You are forbidden to eat meat on Fridays, during the 40 days of Lent before Easter, and on a host of other vigils and fast days throughout the year. This amounts to nearly half the year. For the wealthy, this led to the quirky development of elaborate Lenten dishes, fish shaped to look like ham, or mock eggs made from almond milk and ground nuts. For you, it just means more bread and more vegetable pottage, making your already monotonous diet even more so. Your Lent is just a more intense version of your normal life. This entire system of survival is incredibly fragile. The shadow of famine is a constant presence. Historians still argue about the true nutritional value of the medieval peasant diet. Was the reliance on whole grains and vegetables, without modern processed sugars and fats, secretly healthier in some ways? Or was the chronic lack of calories and vitamins so severe that it stunted growth and led to constant, debilitating illness? What is not in debate is that you live perpetually on the edge of starvation. 1 year of bad weather, a summer drought, a wet harvest, is all it takes to tip you over the edge. In a famine, you eat the grain you had saved for next year's planting, a decision that is a death sentence for the following year. You turn to so-called famine foods. You eat acorns, tree bark, boiled nettles, and even, in the most desperate of times, boiled leather from your shoes. So, as evening falls, you gather with your family in the smoky darkness of your hovel. The trestle table is set up. The shared pot of pottage is placed in the center. You break off a chunk of your hard, dark bread and use it as a spoon, scooping up the warm, familiar mush. You eat until the gnawing ache in your stomach subsides, but you rarely, if ever, feel truly full. Food is not about pleasure, community, or culture. It is about getting through the night. It is the fuel that will allow you to face the back-breaking labor that awaits you with the dawn. Life as a medieval peasant is a thirsty business. You spend your days under the sun, performing hard physical labor that leaves your body screaming for hydration. But quenching that thirst is not as simple as turning on a tap or grabbing a bottle of water. In your world, the simple act of drinking can be a life or death decision. Every sip is a calculated risk, and you learn from a young age that the clearest-looking stream can be a vessel of invisible death. The problem is your water sources. You might get your water from the village well, if you have one, or more likely, from the local river or stream that runs near your settlement. This water looks fine, perhaps, but you have no understanding of germ theory. You don't know about bacteria or microbes. What you do know is that the same river you cup your hands to drink from is the same river where the village women wash their laundry, where waste from the tanner and the dyer might be dumped, and where human and animal waste inevitably finds its way. The concept of sanitation is utterly alien. The river is a convenient, all-purpose drainage system for the entire community. As a result, drinking directly from it is a game of medieval roulette. You might be fine, or you might be struck down by dysentery, what you call the bloody flux, or another of the many waterborne illnesses that can incapacitate or kill you within days. It's less spring water and more of a microbiological soup. This is why your everyday, go-to drink, The beverage that you consume from morning until night is not water. It is ale. Men, women, and even children like you drink it as their primary source of fluids. This isn't because you are a society of party animals. It's a matter of public health. Here is the crucial historical fact that makes this possible. The brewing process itself purifies the water. To make ale, water is boiled for a significant period to create the wort, the sugary liquid extracted from the malted grain. This boiling, unbeknownst to you, kills off the vast majority of the dangerous pathogens lurking in the river water. You don't know the science behind it, but generations of experience have taught you a simple, observable truth. People who drink ale tend to stay healthy, while people who regularly drink water often get sick. Now, this isn't the strong, hoppy, high-alcohol craft beer of the modern world. The ale you drink is what's known as small beer, or small ale. It has a very low alcohol content, often just 1 or 2%. Its primary purpose is hydration and nutrition. It's often called liquid bread for the calories it provides, not intoxication. It would taste nothing like modern beer. It is cloudy, yeasty, slightly sweet from the malt, and served at ambient temperature. It's filling, it's safe, and it's wet. That's all you ask of it. A joke your father makes when he takes a long swig from his leather flask in the fields is that it's the best drink in the world. It's wetter than dust. Brewing is a constant and vital household chore, and it is almost exclusively women's work. The brewster, or female brewer, is a cornerstone of the community. Your mother likely brews for your own family, a task she performs as regularly as baking your dark, heavy bread. A quirky and interesting tidbit is that before the use of hops became widespread across Europe, ale was preserved and flavored with a mixture of herbs and spices called grut. The recipe for grut was often a closely guarded secret, sometimes controlled and taxed by the local lord or a monastery. It could contain a range of botanicals like bog myrtle for aroma, yarrow for bitterness, or heather. This means your ale might have a strange, herbal, almost medicinal taste, very different from the bitter flavor hops impart. What are your other options? They are few and far between. Wine is the drink of the aristocracy and the church. It's a symbol of wealth and status, sipped by your lord in his manor and used by the priest in the sacrament of Massachusetts unless you live in a rare, wine-producing region and owe labor in the vineyards. You will likely never taste it. What about milk from your family's precious cow? Milk is incredibly difficult to keep without refrigeration. It sours within hours on a warm day. For you, milk is not seen as a regular beverage for healthy adults. It's largely considered food for the very young or the very old. Most of the milk your cow produces is quickly turned into butter or, more importantly, cheese, a form of protein that can be stored and eaten throughout the year. Asking for a glass of milk with your pottage would be like asking for a unicorn to plow your field. And so, your life is lubricated by this weak, watery ale. You drink it when you wake up. You carry it with you to the fields. You drink it with your meager evening meal. This reality has led to a fascinating question among academics. Historians still debate the extent to which the medieval population was in a constant state of mild intoxication. While this small beer had a very low alcohol content, could consuming it constantly, from morning till night, every day of your life, have had a cumulative, subtle effect on the medieval psyche. Were you and everyone around you living in a perpetual, low-grade buzz? Or was the alcohol level so negligible that it was no different than drinking water? The sun beats down on the field. The sweat stings your eyes. You pause your weeding, your back aching, and reach for the wooden bottle at your hip. You pull out the stopper and take a long, deep swallow. The ale is lukewarm and tastes of yeast and grain, but it's wet, and it calms the fire in your throat. For a moment, your thirst is gone. More importantly, you know that this drink will give you strength, not sickness. You wipe your mouth on your rough sleeve and turn back to the endless rows of crops. Inevitably, your body, pushed to its limits by labor and fueled by a meager diet, will fail you. It might start with a fever that leaves you shivering and sweating on your straw pallet. It could be a deep, ragged cut from a sickle blade while you're rushing through the harvest. Or perhaps it's a cough that settles deep in your chest and won't go away. In your time, there are no antibiotics, no antiseptics, no understanding of viruses or bacteria. When sickness strikes, you enter a terrifying lottery where the treatments are often as dangerous as the disease, and your fate rests in a confusing muddle of folk wisdom, religious faith, and a deeply flawed medical theory. The entire practice of medicine in your world is built upon a single, central historical fact: the theory of the four humors. For centuries, this idea, inherited from the ancient Greeks, has been the unquestioned foundation of all medical thought. It dictates that your body contains four essential fluids, or humors: blood, which is naturally hot and moist; phlegm, which is cold and moist; yellow bile, hot and dry; and black bile, cold and dry. When you are healthy, it is because these four humors are in perfect balance. Sickness, therefore, is simply an imbalance. A fever means you have an excess of hot and moist blood. Lethargy and depression mean you have too much cold and dry black bile. The logic is simple, elegant, and completely wrong. The goal of every healer is not to kill a pathogen they don't know exists, but to restore your humoral balance. When you fall ill, you don't see a university-trained physician. Those doctors are for dukes and bishops. Your first line of defense is the knowledge passed down in your family, usually administered by your mother. If that fails, you turn to one of two local specialists. The first is the village wise woman or cunning man, who possesses an encyclopedic knowledge of local herbs, charms, and potions. The second, for more physical problems, is the barber surgeon. This is the same man who cuts your father's hair and gives him a shave. In addition to grooming, his trade includes pulling teeth, setting broken bones, and performing the most common medical procedure of all, bloodletting. It's the ultimate one-stop shop for a haircut and a life-threatening medical intervention. Bloodletting is the go-to cure for almost everything. Since so many illnesses, especially fevers, are diagnosed as an excess of blood, the logical solution is to remove some. The barber surgeon will have you sit down, and with a small, sharp knife called a lancet, he will make a quick incision in a vein on your inner arm. The dark, rich blood flows out into a special bowl, its volume carefully measured. He will drain what he deems to be the excess, leaving you feeling lightheaded and weak, but theoretically more balanced. An alternative method is the application of leeches, which are placed on your skin to suck out the offending blood. While it might seem barbaric, in their worldview it is a perfectly rational and scientific response to your symptoms. Making things even more complicated is the bizarre and quirky fusion of medicine and astrology. Your treatment must be timed correctly with the heavens. Before picking up his lancet, a good barber surgeon might consult a diagram known as the zodiac man. This is a drawing of a human body with each part linked to a sign of the zodiac. Aries rules the head, Taurus the neck, Gemini the arms, and so on. The chart tells the practitioner when it is auspicious or dangerous to treat a certain body part, depending on the current position of the moon and planets. Your nagging headache can't be treated by bloodletting from the head today, the barber explains, because the moon is in Aries. They'll have to wait a few days. It's a bit like having your surgery postponed because Mercury is in retrograde, only far more common and taken with deadly seriousness. Alongside this, the wise woman offers her own remedies. She might apply a poultice to your wound or chest. It could be made of honey and moldy bread, which, by sheer luck, might have some antiseptic and antibiotic properties. Or it could be made of less helpful ingredients like cow dung or goose grease. You will be given bitter potions to drink, brews of herbs like comfrey, yarrow, or chamomile. Some of these plants do have real medicinal properties, discovered through centuries of trial and error. Others are useless, chosen because the shape of their leaf resembles the organ you want to heal. A theory called the doctrine of signatures. This world of treatment is so reliant on ritual and belief that it raises a question. Historians still debate the effectiveness of the placebo effect in medieval medicine. How many cures were the result of the patient's profound belief in the healer's ritual, the astrological charts, and the power of prayer, rather than any actual medicinal properties of the treatment itself? When your entire worldview confirms that this process should work, your body may well respond, regardless of the physical reality. Your belief is a powerful medicine in itself, especially when combined with desperate prayer to a saint associated with your particular affliction. You lie on your pallet, shivering. The barber surgeon has taken a bowl of blood, leaving you dizzy. A pungent, strange-smelling poultice is plastered on your skin. You sip the bitter herbal drink the wise woman left for you. Your family murmurs prayers in the dim, smoky light of the hovel. They have done everything they know how to do. They have fought the imbalance in your humors. Now, all that is left is to wait, and to hope that you are strong enough to survive not only your illness, but also its cure. Having survived your latest bout of illness, perhaps with a little less blood in your veins and a lingering scent of herbal poultice, you return to the life of the village. And you find that the health of the community is monitored just as closely as the health of your own body, but the remedies are of a very different sort. There is no privacy in your world. The very concept of a personal life, a space shielded from the prying eyes of others, is a luxury you cannot imagine. You live your life on a public stage, and your audience is your entire village. Your hovel, as you know, is a flimsy construction of mud and sticks with thin walls. You can hear your neighbors' arguments, their babies' cries, their snores at night. They, in turn, hear everything from your own home. When you step outside, you step into a fishbowl. Your work is not in a private office, but in the great open fields, alongside the same families you've known your entire life. Every action is seen, noted, and discussed. The woman drawing water from the well sees who you walk with. The man mending his fence watches how you discipline your child. The family whose strips of land border yours in the field knows exactly how hard you work, and they will judge you for it. In this environment, gossip is not idle chatter. It is the village's central nervous system. It is a powerful, unwritten legal code that enforces conformity more effectively than any law. Your reputation is everything. It determines who will help you during a difficult harvest, who will lend you a cup of flour when your own runs out, and whose daughter might be offered to your son in marriage. A reputation for being lazy, dishonest, quarrelsome, or impious can be ruinous. News, rumors, and judgments travel at astonishing speed, passed from person to person at the well, in the churchyard, and over lukewarm ale at the local alehouse. It's a communication network more efficient than anything you could imagine, the medieval equivalent of fiber optics, but for judging your every move. Of course, there is a formal system of justice, the manor court. Presided over by the Lord's reeve or steward, this court handles the everyday disputes of village life. This is where you are taken if your pig wanders into a neighbor's garden and eats his cabbages, if you are accused of short-changing someone in a trade, or if you fail to show up for your required labor on the Lord's land. The proceedings are swift, the judgments final. Punishments are almost always fines. A few pence here, a bushel of grain there. To you, these fines are a devastating blow, pushing your family ever closer to the edge of survival. For crimes deemed more offensive to the social order, or for repeat offenders, the punishment is designed not just to hurt your wallet, but to destroy your dignity. This brings us to a grimly mainstream fact of medieval justice: public humiliation. The most common tools for this are the stocks and the pillory. You are taken to the village green, where you are locked by your ankles or your head and hands into a wooden frame. And there you stay for hours or even a full day. You are helpless, exposed, and subject to the scorn of everyone you know. People will jeer at you, insult you, and throw things. If you're lucky, it's just rotten vegetables. If you're unlucky, it's animal dung and stones. The physical discomfort is nothing compared to the searing, soul-crushing shame of it all. It's a powerful message to the entire community. This is what happens when you step out of line. Beyond the formal court, the community has its own methods for policing morality. One of the most curious and intimidating of these is a ritual known as the chivalry, or rough music. This was a form of grassroots justice, a noisy, public shaming for offenses the manor court might not touch. Say, for example, a much older widower marries a very young woman, the union seen as unnatural. Or perhaps a husband is known to beat his wife excessively. In response, a crowd of villagers, often the young men, might gather outside the offender's hovel late at night. They would bang pots and pans, blow horns, and shout obscene insults, creating a terrifying cacophony. They might parade an effigy of the person through the village. It was a loud, menacing, and deeply intimidating way for the community to show its disapproval and enforce its unwritten rules. It was like a modern-day online shaming campaign, but with more clanging and a very real threat of things turning violent. This intense, watchful, and judgmental environment raises a complex question. Historians and sociologists still debate whether this intense, conformist community pressure was primarily a source of social stability and safety in a dangerous world, or if it was an oppressive force that crushed individuality and bred resentment. Was your village a supportive web that caught you when you stumbled, or was it a cage of prying eyes that held you in place? The truth is, it was likely both. Your neighbors might help you rebuild your roof after a storm, but they are also the ones who will testify against you in the manor court if your cow strays one too many times. You walk through the village, your every glance and gesture measured. You force a polite smile for the woman whose gossip you know can be poisonous. You offer a respectful nod to the man you were arguing with just yesterday over a boundary stone. You live in a state of constant performance, acutely aware that your survival depends not just on your harvest, but on the delicate, ever-shifting web of alliances, resentments, and reputations that make up your community. There are no secrets here. There is nowhere to hide from the judgment of your peers. The village watches you, yes. Your neighbors' judgments and gossip create an invisible fence around your life, keeping you in line. But that fence sits on land that is not yours, inside a system that you did not choose. Towering over the entire social ecosystem of your village is a single, inescapable power, your lord and master. The village may feel like a cage, but the lord of the manor owns that cage. You are his serf, and your life belongs less to you than it does to his land. This is a fundamental truth of your existence. You are not a slave, not in the sense that you can be sold on an auction block away from your family, but you are profoundly unfree. You are bound to the soil. You cannot decide one day to pack your meager belongings and seek a better life in the next town over. To leave the manor without the Lord's permission is a crime. If your Lord sells his manor or grants it to another noble, you and your family are part of the transaction, like the trees in the forest or the fish in the stream. You are a fixture of the property, a human component of the landscape, looming on a hill or a strategic rise. Often visible from the fields where you toil is the Lord's manor house. It is a world away from your smoky, one-room hovel. It might be made of cold, imposing stone, perhaps with a protective wall or a moat. It radiates a power and permanence that stands in stark contrast to your own fragile existence. This building is the physical anchor of the Lord's authority, a constant, silent reminder of the vast, unbridgeable gulf between his life and yours. Your life is defined by a web of obligations to this man. First and foremost is your labor. As mentioned before, for several days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, perhaps, you do not work on the small strips of land allotted to your family. You work on the Lord's personal land, his domain. This is your rent, paid not in coin, but in sweat and aching muscles. You plow his fields, sow his seeds, and harvest his crops before you can even think about your own. This is the corvée, the forced labor that forms the backbone of the entire feudal economy. On top of this, a portion of everything you produce on your own time is also his. A tithe, or a tenth of your grain, goes to the church, but the Lord often controls its collection. You may also claim the best lamb from your flock, a certain number of eggs, or a share of the cheese your wife makes. The Lord's control extends into every corner of your domestic life through a system of monopolies. You are not allowed to bake bread in your own home. You must use the Lord's oven. You cannot grind your grain with your own hand-cranked cornstone. You must take it to the Lord's watermill. You cannot press your apples for cider in your own press. You must use the Lord's. And for the use of each of these, you must pay a fee, a banalite, usually a portion of the very flour or bread you are trying to make for your family. It's like a cosmic service charge on the act of survival itself. This web of fees ensnares you at every major life event. Here is a quirky, yet telling, example: the merchet. When your daughter wishes to marry a boy from your own village, or, heaven forbid, from another manor, you, as her father, must first pay a fee to the Lord for his permission. The official justification is that the Lord is being compensated for the loss of a potential laborer, or for the transfer of one, if she stays on the manor. The reality is that it's a tax on your right to form a family. Even the act of falling in love has a price tag, payable to the man on the hill. Perhaps the cruelest and most revealing of all these obligations is the Harriet. This is a mainstream, well-documented, and brutal historical fact of serfdom. When the head of the household, your father, and one day, you, dies, your family does not automatically inherit the right to continue working your patch of land. First, they must pay a death tax. The Harriet demanded that the Lord receive your family's single best beast. That means your strongest ox, the one essential for plowing. Or it might be your only milk cow, the one that provides vital nutrition for your children. For a family already shattered by grief and the loss of its main provider, the Harriet is a devastating blow, a final act of extraction that could plunge them into utter destitution. The line between lord and law is non-existent. The manor court is his court. Justice is his will. His reeve can fine you for any perceived infraction. There is no one higher to appeal to. This has led to an enduring question for those who study your time. Historians still debate the extent to which the relationship between lord and peasant was purely exploitative, or if it contained a genuine, albeit unequal, element of paternalistic protection. Did the Lord, in his role as warrior, offer you real security from the dangers of a violent world, from bandits and invading armies? Or was he simply a more successful and legally sanctioned version of those same threats, a parasite dressed in fine clothes? You might only see the Lord himself a few times a year. He might thunder past you on a magnificent war horse, his hunting dogs barking, his noble friends laughing, as they chase a deer across the very fields you struggle to cultivate. He is a creature of another species. He does not know your name. He does not see your individual struggles. You are simply one of his assets, a figure in his grand ledger of wealth and power. Better make sure you look busy when he rides by, or his reeve will hear about it. Your life, from the bread you eat to the daughter you raise to the ox you cherish, is not truly your own. It is lived by the Lord's permission, and that permission can always be revoked. Your Lord controls your body, your labor, and the land beneath your feet. But there is another, even greater power that lays claim to a part of you that the Lord can never truly own, your immortal soul. This power is the Holy Church, and its authority is absolute because its jurisdiction is eternity. The Lord's worst punishment is death. The Church, however, can condemn you to an eternity of torment in the fires of hell. Faced with that choice, you know which power you fear more. Your life is thus lived under a dual authority: the earthly rule of the manor and the spiritual rule of God, a rule that is intertwined with an older, deeper world of superstition and folk magic. The center of this spiritual world is your parish church. It is likely the only stone building you will ever regularly enter. Next to the flimsy, impermanent hovels of the village, the church is a fortress of faith, solid, and enduring. When you push open the heavy wooden door, you leave the familiar world of mud and manure behind. Inside, it is cool and dark, the air thick with the sweet, otherworldly smell of beeswax candles and lingering incense. Sunlight filters through the small, high windows, sometimes through a piece of stained glass depicting a saint, painting colored jewels onto the dusty stone floor. The priest chants the Mass in Latin, a sacred language you do not understand. Your faith is not built on theological study, but on these powerful sensory experiences. The ringing of the Sanctus bell, the sight of the elevated host, and the awe-inspiring, terrifying images painted on the walls. Of all these images, one is designed to hold your attention and strike fear into your heart, the doom painting. Often covering the entire chancel arch, the space above the entrance to the altar, this is a vast, vivid mural of the Last Judgment. On the right side of Christ, you see the saved, serene figures with placid faces, being gently guided by angels into the orderly battlements of heaven. But it's the left side that draws your eye. Here, a chaotic nightmare unfolds. Hideous, leering demons with pitchforks and hooks drag the naked souls of the damned down into the gaping, fiery maw of a monstrous hellmouth. You see kings and bishops screaming alongside peasants, all equal in their damnation, being boiled in cauldrons, roasted on spits, and subjected to a variety of gruesome tortures that mirror their earthly sins. This is not subtle art. It is a holy billboard, a constant and terrifying reminder to behave yourself, because the consequences are eternal. It's probably the most effective motivational poster ever created. Your understanding of the afterlife is simple and stark. Heaven is for the saints. Hell is for the truly wicked. For almost everyone else, for you, for your family, for nearly everyone you know, the soul's destination is purgatory. This is a crucial historical fact of your belief system. Purgatory is a spiritual waiting room, but one where the waiting involves being purified by fire. Your sins, your petty jealousies, your lies, your moments of laziness, all must be burned away over years or centuries of agony before you are clean enough to be admitted into heaven. It's hell light, and it is a terrifying prospect. The only comfort is that your family, back on earth, can help ease your sentence by praying for your soul, lighting candles, and having the priest say a Mass in your name. But the God of the Church and his legion of saints and devils are not the only supernatural forces you worry about. Your world is humming with an older, more local magic. You believe the forests, streams, and ancient mounds are inhabited by spirits, and it is wise to keep them happy. Fairies, the good folk, are not the delightful, winged creatures of modern fancy. They are powerful, capricious, and dangerous beings who might blight your crops, steal your milk, or even snatch your baby from its cradle and leave a sickly changeling in its place. You might leave a small bowl of milk or a piece of bread on your doorstep at night to appease them, a quiet act of insurance. You avoid certain paths after dark, knowing that goblins or ghosts of the unshriven dead might linger there. This means your daily life is a tapestry of small, protective rituals, a quirky blend of Christian piety and folk superstition. You carry a lucky charm, maybe a smooth stone with a natural hole in it, or a bent coin. You instinctively make the sign of the cross when you yawn, to prevent a demon from flying into your mouth. To protect your precious livestock, which are the key to your survival, you might tie a piece of red thread to your cow's tail to ward off the evil eye and prevent its milk from souring. On certain festival days, with roots deep in a pagan past, you might drive your animals between two bonfires, the smoke believed to purify them and ensure their health for the coming year. The relationship between your official faith and these older beliefs is complex. Historians and theologians still debate how medieval peasants reconciled their official Christian faith with these deeply ingrained pagan superstitions. Was it a double belief system where both existed side by side, or did they blend into a unique, syncretic folk religion where Christ and the saints were simply the most powerful forces in a crowded supernatural world? You don't think about it in those terms. You simply do what works. You pray to Saint Anthony to help you find a lost tool, but you also thank the household spirits for not curdling the butter. It's all part of the same cosmic struggle for security. When you confess your sins to the priest, another terrifying social obligation, you probably keep quiet about the offering you left for the fairies. Better not to complicate things. As you walk home from church on a Sunday, the priest's fiery sermon on the torments of hell still ringing in your ears, your hand tightens around the smooth, cool charm in your pocket. You are navigating between two worlds of fear, the grand, ultimate fear of damnation, and the small, immediate fear of a blighted field or a sick animal. Your soul, you feel, is a territory fought over by angels, demons, and a whole host of older, wilder things that whisper in the rustling leaves just beyond the village edge. Your life is not an unbroken chain of misery, prayer, and toil. The very same church that fills your mind with the fear of hell also provides the framework for your only real moments of rest and celebration. The Lord may own your labor, but even you must bow to the religious calendar. And on that calendar are scattered precious, sacred days when all work must cease. These are your holy days, the origin of the modern holiday, and they are your lifeline, brief, chaotic, and desperately needed explosions of noise and color in a life of monotonous gray. Time off is not a right. It is a religious mandate. You don't work on major feast days like Easter, Whitsun, the seventh Sunday after Easter, and All Saints' Day, not to mention the patron saint's day of your own village church. The most anticipated period of the entire year is the 12 days of Christmas, a historical and cultural institution stretching from the Feast of the Nativity on December 25th to Epiphany on January 6th. For nearly 2 weeks, the agricultural world holds its breath. The fields are frozen, and the Lord's demands are silenced by sacred tradition. This is the longest you will go without performing back-breaking labor, and you intend to make the most of it. Celebration, for you, means 2 things above all else: feasting and drinking. On a major holy day, the grim cycle of pottage and dark bread is broken. The Lord might, in a show of festive generosity, provide a barrel of strong ale and perhaps an ox to be roasted and shared among his tenants. The ale is not the weak, watery, small beer you drink to stay hydrated in the fields. This is the good stuff, thick and potent, designed for intoxication. Your own family might contribute to the feast, perhaps slaughtering the goose you've been fattening for this very purpose. For the first time in months, you taste roasted meat. You eat a slightly better bread, maybe made with more wheat than rye. You eat until you are truly, properly full, a rare and dizzying sensation. The ale flows like water. The goal, for once, is not simply to quench thirst, but to achieve a state of joyful, raucous drunkenness. The usual tight-lipped social constraints of the village loosen with every gulp. Men sing bawdy songs, voices raised in slurring harmony. Arguments break out and are just as quickly forgotten in a sloppy embrace. Even the parish priest might seem to look the other way, understanding that this brief, explosive release is a necessary social valve. After all, it's hard to worry about the finer points of eternal damnation when you're this full of ale and goose. With full bellies and heads swimming with drink, your energy turns to games. But medieval recreation is not the safe, organized sport of the modern world. It is rough, chaotic, and often breathtakingly violent. The centerpiece of a festival day might be a village-wide game of folk football, a quirky and brutal tradition known across Europe. Forget neat pitches and numbered jerseys. The ball is an inflated pig's bladder. The teams are the entire able-bodied male populations of two rival villages. The goals might be the church door of your own village and the mill wheel of your neighbors, 2 miles away. The rules are simple. Get the ball to the goal by any means necessary. This results in a sprawling, moving brawl of 100 men or more, surging across fields, splashing through frigid streams, and crashing through fences. Punching, kicking, wrestling the ball carrier to the ground. It's all part of the game. There are no yellow cards for a bad tackle, though there are plenty of bloody noses, broken fingers, and sometimes much more serious injuries. It is less a sport and more a ritualized riot, a way to channel the aggression and rivalry between settlements into a single, exhausting, glorious afternoon of mayhem. If the mass brawl of football isn't on the agenda, there are other physical contests. Wrestling matches are held on the village green, where local champions grapple in the mud for the prize of a ribbon or a live pig. Archery contests allow you to show off a skill that is both a sport and a vital military necessity. And there is always dancing. Not the refined, delicate steps of the Lord's court, but wild, energetic, stopping group dances, performed to the tune of a pipe and tabor played by a local musician. The sheer violence and chaos of these pastimes have long fascinated scholars. Historians and anthropologists debate the social function of these violent holiday games. Were they simply a chaotic outlet for the pent-up frustrations and aggression of a hard-pressed population? Or did they serve a more structured purpose in reinforcing village identity and managing inter-village rivalries? Was the annual football match a way to prevent those rivalries from boiling over into actual, deadly warfare? Whatever the reason, for you, it is pure, exhilarating release. As dust falls on the holy day, you stumble back to your hovel. Your belly is full, your head is spinning from the strong ale, and your body is covered in bruises from the afternoon's fun. You are exhausted, but it's a happy exhaustion, a world away from the soul-crushing weariness of the fields. The brief escape is over. Tomorrow, the work begins again, your head will ache, and the world will return to its normal, dreary state. But you will carry the memory of this day, the taste of meat, the roar of the crowd, the feeling of wild abandon, like a warm coal in your heart. These rare, bright, violent days are the safety valve that makes your life of pressure and restraint just about bearable. The wild, chaotic joy of a holy day is a temporary escape. As you grow older, moving through your teens and into your early 20s, the community's focus on you shifts from a casual observer to that of a strategic planner. It is time for you to marry. This is not a question or a choice. It is a fundamental necessity, as inevitable as the turning of the seasons. But the process has none of the romance or personal choice you might imagine. Marriage is not an affair of the heart. It is a business transaction, a grimly practical contract designed to ensure the survival of families and the continuation of labor. Love is a concept for the poets and the high-born nobles, who have the luxury of indulging in such feelings. For you, love is not a prerequisite for marriage. It is, at best, a potential and unlikely byproduct that might grow over years of shared hardship. Your marriage will be arranged by your parents, a strategic negotiation where you're the primary asset. The questions they ask are not about chemistry or compatibility, but about land, livestock, and labor. When your father sits down with the father of your potential spouse, they are hammering out a deal. Does her family have a good strip of land? Is his family's ox strong and healthy? What is her dowry? The dowry is the property, the goods, animals, or, very rarely, a small amount of coin that a bride brings to her new family. A girl with a scrawny pig and a few pieces of linen is a far less attractive prospect than a girl whose father can provide a cow and a sturdy wooden chest. Likewise, a young man with a secure claim to a decent parcel of land is a prime catch. You are both being sized up like livestock at a market. The desirable qualities in a future spouse are brutally practical. Is he a strong worker, not known for shirking his duties in the field? Is she healthy, with wide hips that suggest she will have no trouble bearing the many children needed to work the land? Is her reputation clean? Is his family free from debt to the Lord? Physical appearance is a tertiary concern at best. A handsome face can't plow a field, and a pretty smile can't survive a harsh winter. You don't swipe right on a profile. You agree to a merger with the family who has the best plow-pulling ox. The Church, and its official doctrine, introduced a rather progressive idea for the time, for a marriage to be valid in the eyes of God. Both the man and the woman had to give their free and public consent. This is a significant historical fact. However, the gap between official theology and village reality is immense. When the time comes, you will be asked if you consent. But with your entire family's social standing and economic future hanging in the balance, what choice do you really have? To refuse the match your father has painstakingly arranged would be to defy your family, shame them publicly, and risk being cast out on your own, a fate that means almost certain destitution. And so, when the priest asks the question, you say yes. Your consent is a product of overwhelming social and economic coercion. While the match itself is a contract, some regions had quirky customs that allowed for a form of heavily supervised courtship. In some rural communities, a practice known as bundling existed. A betrothed couple might be permitted to spend the night together in the same bed, but they remained fully clothed, and a bundling board, or a roll of blankets, was often placed down the middle as a firm barrier. This allowed for a degree of intimacy, the chance to talk, to whisper, to get to know the stranger you are about to be tied to for life, without, in theory, compromising the bride's all-important virginity. It's a strange mix of pragmatism and propriety, the most heavily chaperoned sleepover in history. Your wedding day arrives. The ceremony itself does not take place at the high altar inside the church. Instead, you exchange your vows on the porch at the church door, and facie ecclesi, in the face of the church. This public declaration makes your union a binding contract, witnessed by God and the entire community. There is no backing out now. After the vows, you may enter the church for a nuptial Massachusetts. You have already paid the Lord his marchet fee for the privilege of marrying, and a fee to the priest is also expected. Even on your wedding day, the system takes its cut. After the solemnities are over, a celebration erupts, much like the festivals you know. The families pool their resources for a feast. Ale flows, and there is dancing. The community celebrates the creation of a new household, a new unit in the village's web of survival. But as the day ends and the drunken guests stumble home, you are left with your new spouse, a person you barely know. This raises a question that historians and social scientists continue to debate. Could genuine affection and companionship blossom within the rigid framework of these arranged, utilitarian marriages? Did couples eventually learn to love each other through shared hardship and mutual dependency? Or did most peasant marriages remain purely functional, emotionally barren partnerships? Looking at this person who is now your husband or wife, you don't have an answer. You only know that your future is now inextricably linked to theirs. Your ability to eat, to stay warm, to have children, to survive, is now a shared burden. There is no divorce. This is forever. You are bound together not by passion, but by a contract forged from necessity, and you can only hope that it will be strong enough to withstand the hard years ahead. You are now a wife. The contract has been signed, the vows have been witnessed, and your life is now bound to your husband's. For a man, this means gaining a helper and a means to produce heirs. For you, as a woman, it means entering into a state of unending, threefold labor. A man's work, from sun to sun, is back-breaking and relentless. But your work, as a woman, is never done. You are responsible for the home, you are expected to labor in the fields, and your body is now a vessel for the next generation. Each role is a full-time job in itself. Your day begins before anyone else's in the cold, pre-dawn darkness of the hovel. While your husband and children sleep, you are the one who carefully uncovers the embers from yesterday's fire, coaxing them back to life with your breath and a few dry twigs. You are the keeper of the flame, the literal center of the household's warmth. You set the pot of pottage to bubble over the hearth, a task that will continue all day. You milk the cow, your fingers numb with cold, and then begin the process of churning yesterday's milk into butter or setting it aside to make cheese. These products are not just for your family. A surplus can be a vital source of income, a few extra pennies earned at the village market. You are the family's live-in chef, and the menu never, ever changes. Your domestic duties extend far beyond the cooking pot. You are the brewster, responsible for making the weak but essential ale that your family drinks instead of the dangerous water. You tend the small kitchen garden, the curtilage, where you grow the cabbages, onions, and peas that form the basis of your pottage. You are also the creator of all textiles. You take raw, greasy wool or coarse flax and begin the long, arduous process of turning it into clothing. You card it, clean it, and then you spin. For hours upon hours, sitting by the fire, walking to the well, watching your children, your hands are never still, constantly working a drop spindle to produce the thread that is the basic building block of your family's protection against the cold. Once you have enough thread, you must weave it into rough, scratchy cloth on a simple loom, and from that cloth, you will hand sew every tunic, every stocking, every piece of clothing your family wears. Mending these garments is a constant, thankless battle against entropy. Despite your legal subordination, this domestic production gives you a strange sort of power. This brings us to a quirky tidbit about your economic life. While you are legally under your husband's authority, your role as a producer is recognized. A woman who was particularly skilled at brewing, for example, could become the village alewife or brewster, selling her surplus product to neighbors. Her ale would be judged for quality by an official ale conner, and she could develop a reputation and a small business of her own. This was a vital and respected female trade that gave many women a degree of economic agency far beyond what the law seemed to allow. But this full-time job as household manager does not get you a pass on the second job, agricultural labor. When the season demands it, particularly during the haymaking and the frantic panic of the autumn harvest, you are in the fields alongside your husband. Your back aches just as his does. You swing a sickle, your hands becoming chapped and calloused. You stoop for hours to gather the fallen grain. The only major farm task generally reserved for men is the heavy work of guiding the plow. For everything else, your labor is expected and required. Then there is your third, and most dangerous, career, motherhood. From the moment you are married until you are past childbearing age, you can expect to be in a near-constant cycle of pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding. This is a historical fact of your life, and it is terrifying. Each pregnancy is a gamble with your own life. The maternal mortality rate is staggeringly high. Without modern medicine, a baby in the wrong position, a failure to deliver the placenta, or a post-birth hemorrhage are all likely death sentences. You have seen women in your village die in childbirth, and you know that each time your belly swells, you are rolling the dice. This perpetual state of pregnancy and nursing happens while you are still performing all your other duties. You carry your infant in a sling as you weed the garden. You rock a cradle with your foot while you spin. You are the sole source of comfort, food, and supervision for your young children. It is a life of constant interruption, of a divided focus, of a body pushed to the absolute limits of its endurance. All of this raises a complex question for modern observers. Historians, particularly feminist historians, continue to debate the nature of female power within the peasant household. Despite their legal subjugation, did their absolute control over the domestic economy, the food, the clothing, the ale, give them a significant, if informal, sphere of authority that balanced the patriarchal structure? Or was this power simply the right to manage their own unending servitude? As darkness falls, your family sleeps. Your husband rests, restoring his strength for the fields. But you are likely still awake by the dim light of the dying fire, the rhythmic whirl of your spindle the only sound. Your hands are never idle. You are the indispensable engine of the family unit, the silent nexus of production, reproduction, and survival. Your work is as essential as the sun and the rain, and just as invisible and taken for granted. There comes a point where the relentless cycle of labor, the crushing obligations to your Lord, and the sheer, grinding monotony of life on the manor become too much to bear. A dangerous idea, a whisper from a passing traveler, or a desperate fantasy born of exhaustion, takes root in your mind. Escape. The destination is a town, a place you've only heard of, a walled sanctuary promising a different kind of life. And so, one moonless night, you slip away from your hovel, a shadow moving through the silent fields. You are breaking the law. If caught, you will be dragged back in disgrace and punished severely. But the hope of freedom, however slim, is worth the risk. Your guiding star is an old legal principle, a sliver of light in the darkness of serfdom. The German saying is Stadtluft macht frei. City air makes you free. This is a real and transformative historical fact. If a serf like you can live and work within the walls of a chartered town for a year and a day without being discovered and reclaimed by your lord, you are, by law, a free person. It is a year and a day long game of hide and seek, with your entire future as the prize. After days of weary travel, you see it, the town. It rises from the landscape like an unnatural mountain range, a fortress of high stone walls punctuated by imposing gatehouses. At the gate, you are swept into a chaotic river of humanity. Merchants shout, guards demand tolls, pilgrims pray, beggars plead, and the air is thick with the dust and smells of 100 carts and 1,000 people. You slip through, an anonymous face in the crowd, and find yourself inside. The first thing that hits you is the stench. It is a physical assault, a complex and suffocating perfume of human progress. The ever-present medieval background smell of mud and manure is here, but it's concentrated, weaponized. It's mixed with the contents of chamber pots tossed from overhead windows, rotting garbage piled in alleys, and the specific, localized stenches of industry, the eye-watering ammonia from the tanner's pits, the metallic smoke from the blacksmiths, the smell of blood and offal from the butcher's shambles. Then comes the noise. In the country, your ears are accustomed to the wind, the lowing of a cow, the distant clang of a church bell. Here, the sound is a constant, deafening roar. Church bells don't just ring. They clang and battle for dominance from a dozen different steeples, marking the hours for work and prayer. Hammers bang on anvils, saws screech through wood, merchants scream their prices, and the groan of wooden cart wheels on uneven cobblestones provides a constant, grinding bass line to the urban symphony. The streets themselves are narrow, winding canyons. The upper floors of the timber-framed houses are jettied, meaning they overhang the street below, leaning in so closely to their neighbors opposite that they almost block out the sky, creating a perpetual twilight. You quickly learn a new survival skill, dodging pigs. Here is a quirky and hazardous fact of urban life. Pigs were the city sanitation department. They were often left to roam the streets, eating the refuse and garbage that people threw out their doors. While efficient, these semi-feral pigs were also a notorious menace, known for knocking over market stalls, biting pedestrians, and, in some horrifying but documented cases, attacking and killing small children. Learning to navigate a narrow alley with an aggressive sow is just another part of your new urban education. You need work, and you need a roof over your head. You have no craft, no skill beyond the field labor you just escaped. Your only hope is to become an apprentice. You might find a weaver, a baker, or a carpenter willing to take you on. This means trading one form of servitude for another. For the next 7 years, you will work for a master in exchange for training, food, and a place to sleep. You will earn no wages. Your life is controlled by your master and by the powerful guilds that regulate every aspect of a trade, setting prices, ensuring quality, and fiercely limiting who is allowed to practice their craft. It's a closed shop, and you are at the very bottom. Your new home is not a hovel on the damp earth, but a tiny space in a crowded, vertical world. You might rent a corner of a room in a tenement building, a room you share with several other apprentices, sleeping on a straw pallet on the floor, listening to the sounds of a dozen other families through the thin wooden walls. It is darker, more crowded, and less private than the hut you fled. The realities of this new life have led to a scholarly debate. Historians and archaeologists debate the actual sanitary conditions of medieval towns. While accounts of filth are numerous, Excavation reveals that many towns had regulations about waste disposal, public latrines, and conduits for fresh water. Was the medieval city an irredeemable cesspit, or was it a place of constant, if often failing, struggle towards civic hygiene? Looking at the trench of filth running down the middle of your street, you might lean towards the cesspit theory. You have traded old dangers for new ones. In the countryside, you feared crop failure and your lord's anger. Here, you fear fire, a constant terror that can sweep through the tightly packed wooden houses in minutes. You fear the plague and other diseases, which spread like wildfire in the close, unsanitary quarters. And you fear the human predators of the city, the thieves and cutthroats who lurk in the dark, anonymous alleyways. Finally, the day comes. You have survived for a year and a day. Your Lord has not found you. You walk out into the noisy, stinking street, and you are, for the first time in your life, legally free. But what does it mean? You are a low-ranking apprentice, bound to a master for years to come. You live in a squalid room, breathing foul air, your gut rumbling with hunger. You have escaped the tyranny of the Lord only to find the tyranny of the guild, of the landlord, of urban poverty. You have traded the misery of the fields for the misery of the pavement. Life on the manor is a closed loop of hardship, a predictable cycle of labor and obligation. But there is another kind of misery, one that is unpredictable, terrifying, and utterly devastating. It is the misery of war. The quarrels of the great lords, your master's dispute with a neighboring baron over a strip of land, a contested inheritance, or a point of honor, are things you neither understand nor care about. But when those quarrels boil over into open conflict, they are not fought on some distant, designated battlefield. They are fought in your fields, in your village, and with your body. The first sign of trouble might be a summons from the Lord's reeve. Your master is gathering his forces, and you are being called to serve. This is not a volunteer army. It is a levy, a conscription. You have no armor, no training, and no choice. You are expected to show up at the castle gates with whatever weapon you can provide yourself. For a peasant, this means bringing your work tools into battle. This is the quirky and terrifying reality of the peasant levy. Your wood-cutting axe, your father's sickle for reaping grain, or a long-handled billhook used for clearing brush are suddenly reclassified as military-grade weapons. You might be given a simple spear, a sharpened stick, but you will not be given a sword. Swords are for men of status. You are simply a body, cannon fodder to blunt the charge of an enemy you've never met for a cause you don't comprehend. If you are marched off on a campaign, you experience a new world of suffering. The days are filled with endless, grueling marches in all weather, your thin leather shoes or bare feet raw and bleeding. The nights are spent sleeping on the cold, hard ground with 100 other coughing, fearful men. Discipline is brutal, enforced by hardened men-at-arms who view you with contempt. And if you do see battle, your position is in the front rank of the infantry, a human wall designed to absorb the first shock of an armored cavalry charge. Your chances of returning to your hovel are slim. But perhaps the greater terror is not being conscripted, but being left behind. Because when the enemy decides to attack your lord, they often don't bother with the costly and dangerous business of assaulting his castle. Instead, they engage in a tactic designed to bring him to his knees by destroying you. This strategy has a name, a chillingly formal French term that is a mainstream fact of medieval warfare, the chevauchée. It is, in essence, a large-scale, destructive raid through enemy territory with the specific goal of terrorizing the civilian population and wrecking the economy. It is war against the peasant. You hear the rumors first, then you see the smoke on the horizon. Then, they are upon you. A company of enemy knights and soldiers, a terrifying vision of steel and horseflesh, thunders into your village. They are not looking for a fight. They are looking to inflict pain. They ride through your fields of ripening wheat, trampling the grain and setting it ablaze with torches. They break into your animal pens, slaughtering your precious milk cow and your handful of sheep, not just for food, but for the sheer waste of it, leaving the carcasses to rot. They storm your flimsy hovel, kicking in the door, grabbing the few things you own, a cooking pot, a woolen blanket, before putting the building to the torch. Within an hour, your entire village, the sum total of your community's worldly existence, is a smoking ruin. If your lord's castle is nearby, you might be herded inside its walls for protection before the enemy arrives, beginning a new kind of ordeal, a siege. You are crammed into the castle's outer ward with hundreds of other refugee families and all your livestock. The stench is unimaginable, a combination of terrified people and animals living in their own filth that makes your hovel seem like a pristine palace. Food and water are immediately and strictly rationed. Disease spreads like wildfire in the crowded, unsanitary conditions. And day and night, you live with the terrifying, percussive roar of siege engines, catapults, and massive trebuchets, flinging huge stones that smash against the castle walls, each impact a tremor that shakes your very bones. The strategic value of such brutal, anti-civilian tactics remains a point of contention. Military historians still debate the strategic effectiveness of warfare like the Shevachy. Did the terror and economic devastation successfully pressure enemy lords into submission? Or did it often backfire, hardening resistance and achieving little beyond immense human suffering? For the academics, it is a debate. For you, cowering in the woods as your home burns, the answer is academic. Eventually, the armies move on, their trail of destruction marking their path. You emerge from the crowded castle or from your hiding place in the forest and return to what was once your village. There is nothing left. Your home is a pile of charred timbers. Your fields are blackened stubble. Your animals are gone. The grain you had stored for the winter has been burned or looted. The immediate danger from soldiers has passed, but it has been replaced by a slower, more patient, and even more certain killer, starvation. The war, a contest of pride between two men you will never know, has completely destroyed your ability to survive. You stand amidst the ruins of your life, a piece of collateral damage in a game you were never invited to play, realizing that in the eyes of the armored men on their great horses, you are not really a person. You are just a resource to be destroyed. War is a terror brought by men, a brutal but understandable horror. But in the middle of the 14th century, a new kind of fear arrives, a dread so profound it makes the violence of lords and soldiers seem like a petty squabble. It begins as a rumor, a story whispered by a traveler from some distant port, a tale of a pestilence in the east that kills with terrifying speed. You pay it little mind. The world is full of frightening stories. Then the rumors get closer. The pestilence is in Italy, then France. Then it is in a town just a day's walk from your own village. And then, one summer afternoon, your neighbor collapses with a burning fever. The great dying has begun. There is no army to see, no warning horn to hear. The enemy is invisible, and it moves with terrifying silence. It starts with a fever, chills that rack your body, and a sudden, violent sickness. But then comes the unmistakable sign that this is no ordinary illness, the buboes. In your armpit, or your groin, or on your neck, a lump begins to swell. It grows with agonizing speed to the size of an egg, then an apple, hard and exquisitely painful to the touch. Soon after, dark patches, like old bruises, may blossom on your skin as your blood leaks beneath it. This is the source of its name, the Black Death. From the first sign of fever to the final, rattling breath, it may only be 3 or 4 days. The outcome is almost certain. The sheer scale of the dying is impossible to comprehend. This is the central, world-shattering historical fact of your time. This sickness will kill somewhere between 1/3 and 2/3 of everyone in Europe. It is not a sickness that culls the weak. It takes the strong, the young, the healthy, men, women, and children with equal, indiscriminate fury. In the coming months, your world will be turned into an apocalyptic landscape of death. All the pillars of your society, all the things you trusted, crumble to dust. The barber surgeon's medical theories are useless. He tries bloodletting to balance your humors, but it only weakens you, hastening the end. The wise woman's herbal remedies have no effect. Your prayers, too, seem to go unanswered. You flock to the church, begging God for mercy, but the pestilence rages on, mocking your faith. The doom painting in the church seems to be coming to life, but the demons are dragging everyone to hell, regardless of their piety. The priest, your spiritual guide, is one of the first to die, exposed as he gives the last rites to the sick and dying. In the face of this utter failure, wild theories and desperate, quirky remedies emerge. University scholars blame the alignment of the planets. Most people, including you, believe the plague is a miasma, a form of corrupt, poisonous air. To combat this, you are told to carry sweet-smelling flowers or a pouch of herbs like lavender and rosemary, holding it to your nose whenever you leave your hovel. You burn juniper or apple wood inside, hoping the fragrant smoke will purify the air. In some towns, a terrifying movement of fanatics known as the flagellants appears. They march in long processions, stripped to the waist, whipping themselves with leather scourges until they bleed, believing that their public penance will appease God's wrath. Their arrival is a sign of ultimate desperation, a spectacle of religious hysteria in a world that has lost its mind. The very fabric of your society shreds. The fear of contagion becomes stronger than the bonds of love and duty. A husband might abandon his sick wife. Parents, crazed with terror, might lock the door on their own children. You learn to walk down the middle of the path, to turn your face away from any person you see. Trust is dead. The rhythms of life cease. The fields are left half-plowed, the ripe grain rotting on the stalk because there is no one left to harvest it. The good news, a morbid joke you might whisper to yourself, is that you no longer have to perform your labor service for the Lord. The bad news is that the Lord, His Reeve, and nearly everyone you know is already dead or dying. The precise, horrifying toll of this catastrophe is still a matter of study. Demographers and historians still debate the exact mortality rate of the Black Death, and whether its successive waves over the next century were the same disease or a combination of different pathogens. For you, the statistics are written on the faces of the dead. Your village, once a bustling community of 200 souls, is now home to perhaps 60. The noise of life is replaced by an eerie silence, broken only by the wailing of a new widow or the rumble of the death cart making its grim rounds. So many die so quickly that there is no time for proper Christian burials. The churchyard is full. The priest, or whoever is left, consecrates a new piece of ground, and massive trenches are dug, plague pits, filled with the dead, stacked like firewood, and covered with a thin layer of lime and earth. Somehow, you survive. You wake up each morning in a state of shock, the fever having passed you by. But you are an island in a sea of death. You are surrounded by ghosts. The world you were born into, with its rigid certainties of lord and serf, of labor and prayer, has been completely and irrevocably shattered. The apocalypse did not come with fire and trumpets. It came as a silent, creeping sickness that has left you alone in a graveyard. The great dying has passed, leaving a shattered and eerily quiet world in its wake. The plague has broken the old certainties. Your lord may be dead, the manor court may have ceased to meet, and for the first time, your labor is a scarce and valuable commodity. The bonds of serfdom have been frayed, and for the first time in your life, you might have a reason to travel, to seek out a new village where workers are needed, or to make your way to a town where wages are suddenly, shockingly high. But leaving the familiar, ghost-haunted fields of your home means stepping into a world that is now more dangerous than ever before. You set out on the road, which is little more than a muddy, rutted track. The landscape between settlements is a vast, untamed wilderness. The forest that you once saw as a source of firewood or foraged nuts now seem menacing and dark. Every shadow seems to hold a threat. Every snap of a twig makes your heart leap into your throat. In the old world, you feared the authority of the Lord's reeve. Here, you fear the complete lack of authority. The king's peace does not extend into the deep woods. Here, the only law is the law of the hungry. The figures you fear are the outlaws. And you must banish from your mind any ballads you may have heard from a traveling minstrel about noble heroes in green tights. This is a crucial historical fact you learn the hard way. The real outlaws of the medieval world are not charming rebels fighting for justice. They are desperate men, forged by the brutal realities of the age. They are soldiers left unemployed and unpaid after a lord's war. Peasants who have fled a vengeful master, criminals escaping the gallows, and, now more than ever, men who have lost their entire families to the plague and have nothing left to lose. They don't steal from the rich to give to the poor. They steal from anyone weaker than themselves simply to survive another day. Their motive isn't political, it's a rumbling in their empty bellies. The brutal reality of their existence is perfectly captured in their legal status. This quirky and terrifying tidbit from the law of the time defines your fear. A man formally declared an outlaw is known as a caput lupinum, wolf's head. This means he has been stripped of all legal personhood. He is, in the eyes of the law, no longer a man but a beast. Anyone, at any time, can kill him without punishment or penalty, just as you would kill a wolf that was threatening your sheep. This status creates a uniquely desperate and dangerous kind of person, one who has been pushed completely outside the protection of society and has no reason to show any mercy to it. You are walking through a quiet stretch of forest, the path dappled with an uneasy light, when they appear. They don't ride up on chargers, they simply melt out from behind the ancient trees. There are 3 of them, gaunt and hollow-eyed, their clothes little more than rags. They hold crude clubs and one has the glint of a rusty knife. There are no grand speeches about the tyranny of the king. There is only a menacing silence, and then a low command to give them what you have. Your heart pounds. You have almost nothing, a hunk of dark bread, a few pennies you've sewn into your tunic, and the worn leather shoes on your feet. But to them, this is a treasure. The encounter is swift, humiliating, and terrifying. They shove you to the ground, take your food, your money, even your shoes, leaving you barefoot on the rough track. They're not evil, you realize. They're just hungry. And that is far more frightening. This grim reality makes the stories of Robin Hood seem like a cruel joke. The legends you've heard are a beautiful fantasy of a world set right, where the outlaws are noble, their cause is just, and their violence is directed only at the corrupt and powerful. This has led to an endless debate for future generations. Historians and literary scholars still debate the origins and meaning of the Robin Hood legends. Are they a form of wish fulfillment and social protest for an oppressed peasantry, a folk memory of a real, long-lost Saxon resistance to Norman rule, or simply a popular adventure story with no deep political roots? As you pull yourself up, your feet already cold on the damp earth, you know that whatever their origin, those stories are a lie. You continue on your way, poorer and wiser, and you realize the great irony of your new situation. In the old world, you are trapped on your manor by the force of law. In this new, post-plague world, with its weakened authorities, you are trapped by the force of fear. The roads are not safe. The forests are no-go zones. Your world, in practice, remains just as small. You might have preferred the old boss you knew to the 100 new bosses with knives hiding behind every tree. The forest falls silent again behind you. The rustle of leaves sounds like footsteps. You understand now that the collapse of the old order did not usher in an age of freedom for the common man. It simply created a power vacuum. And that vacuum has been filled by the most ancient law of all. The strong will prey upon the weak, and in the deep woods, you are very, very weak. The years pass. The raw, gaping wounds left by the great dying slowly scar over. The world, though changed and emptier, finds a new rhythm. And against all probability, you are still part of it. You survive the perils of birth, the back-breaking labor of your youth, the famines, the wars, and the pestilence that wiped out half of everyone you ever knew. You have made it. You have reached the long twilight of your life. You are old. But old age, in your time, is not the gentle, silver-haired retirement of the modern world. It arrives early and without ceremony. The common historical understanding is that life expectancy was low, perhaps 35 years. But this number is a brutal statistical trick, skewed by the vast numbers of infants and children who never made it to adulthood. If, like you, a person survived the gauntlet of youth, reaching the age of 40, 50, or even 60 was not at all uncommon. The difference is what those years do to a body. A lifetime of hard labor, poor nutrition, and non-existent health care means that by 45, you are already ancient. Your body is worn and weathered as a wind-beaten tree. Your own body, which you relied upon for your very survival, has become your final and most intimate enemy. Your back is a constant, dull fire of pain, a legacy of 1,000 harvests spent bent over a sickle. Your joints, knees, hips, knuckles, are swollen and stiff, grinding with what you call the rheum, and we would call severe arthritis. Simple movements that were once thoughtless, like rising from a stool or walking to the well, are now slow, painful, and deliberate undertakings. Every morning, you have to coax your body back into motion, feeling like a rusty piece of farm equipment. Then there are your teeth. Your diet, low in sugar, has not saved them. Decades of eating coarse, gritty bread have worn them down to painful, jagged stumps. They are riddled with decay, abscesses forming in your jaw with an agony that can drive you mad. The only cure is to have the offending tooth pulled by the village blacksmith or barber surgeon, without anesthetic and with a horrifying pair of pliers. By now, your smile has more gaps than a broken fence, and chewing is a painful chore. Your world is also becoming a blur. The fine work of mending a net or threading a needle is now impossible, your vision clouded and dim. For these creeping ailments of age, the formal medicine of humors is of little use. Instead, you turn to the folk remedies passed down for generations. This is where you encounter a quirky world of magical thinking. For your agonizing toothache, the wise woman might not give you a painkiller, but a charm. You might be told to drive a nail taken from a coffin into the wall of your hovel, believing the pain will transfer to the wood. Or you might apply a poultice made from henbane, a plant that is both a sedative and a poison. For your failing eyesight, you might be instructed to bathe your eyes in a dew collected on May morning, or in a distillation of the herb eyebright. These are the desperate measures of people with no other options, a medicine of hope and ritual against the inevitable decay. As your physical abilities decline, your social standing undergoes a terrifying shift. Your entire life, your value has been measured by your capacity to work. Now, you can no longer keep up with the younger folk in the fields. Your hands are too gnarled for the loom, your back too weak to haul water. You are becoming what you always feared you might, another mouth to feed, a burden on your children. In a world where the margin between survival and starvation is razor thin, your continued existence is an economic liability. This creates a terrible, unspoken tension in the hovel. Your family cares for you, bound by love and Christian duty, but your presence is a constant strain on their fragile resources. This has led to a long-running debate for those who study your time. Gerontologists and medieval historians continue to debate the social standing of the elderly in the Middle Ages. Were they generally revered as fonts of wisdom and tradition in a world without widespread literacy? Or were they more often viewed with resentment as unproductive burdens on fragile household economies? The truth, as you experience it, is that you are both at the same time. You are respected for your knowledge. You are the one who can tell the stories of the old days, who remembers the precise boundary marker of a field, who knows the best way to smoke a ham. You are the guardian of the family's memory. You also provide a vital service, watching the very young children, freeing their parents for heavier work. You try to remain useful, shelling peas, feeding the chickens, your gnarled hands never truly still. But you feel the cold more keenly now. You huddle closer to the fire, the drafts of the hovel chilling you to the bone. You know that a simple fall, or a winter cough that you would have shaken off in your youth, could now be the end of you. You have survived the great horrors of the world, the plague, the wars, the famines. Now your final battle is a quiet, domestic one, fought against your own body and the creeping chill of a northern winter. You are a living miracle, a walking ancestor, and a heavy weight on the shoulders of those you love. The winter cough that settled in your chest after the harvest does not leave. It lingers, then deepens, leaving you weak and breathless. Or perhaps you slip on a patch of ice by the well, and your old, brittle hip cracks. You are carried back to your hovel and laid upon the straw pallet you were born on. This time, you know you will not be getting up again. Your long, hard life of survival has entered its final chapter. Your task now is not to fight for life, but to prepare for death, and to do it properly. In your world, dying is not a passive, medical event. It is the most crucial spiritual performance of your life. There is a whole tradition, a religious technology, dedicated to this moment. While you cannot read the popular Ars Moriendi, or The Art of Dying, books that circulate among the literate, their lessons have been drilled into you through a lifetime of sermons. The goal is to achieve a good death. This means dying in a state of grace, conscious of your faith, and accepting of God's will. The greatest terror is a bad death, being struck by lightning in a field, getting gored by a bull, or dying alone in your sleep. A sudden end means no time to confess, no time to receive the sacraments, leaving your soul stained with sin and in terrible peril of damnation. Your final illness, in a strange way, is a blessing. It gives you time to prepare. The first and most urgent priority is to send for the priest. Your family dispatches a child to run to his cottage. Every moment counts. As you lie there, the smoky air of the hovel thick around you, you see him arrive, a stooped figure carrying a small case containing the tools of his sacred trade, the holy oils, the communion wafer, the book of prayers. He is here to administer the last rites, the final spiritual cleansing that will prepare your soul for its journey. The process is methodical. First, and most importantly, is your final confession. The priest leans in close, your family respectfully moving to the other side of the room to give the illusion of privacy. You must now dredge up the sins of a lifetime. You confess your moments of envy toward a neighbor with a healthier cow, your flashes of anger, the times you shirked your labor, the lies you told, the impure thoughts you entertained. You hold nothing back. It is your last chance to unburden your soul before you stand before the judgment seat of God. You just hope you can remember that lie you told about a stolen turnip 40 years ago. You hear the divine paperwork is very thorough. After the priest has absolved you, he administers the viaticum. This is your last Holy Communion, a tiny piece of consecrated bread that you struggle to swallow. It is, you have been taught, food for the journey, spiritual sustenance for your passage into the next world. Then comes the anointing, or extreme unction. The priest digs his thumb in holy oil and marks your senses, your eyes, ears, nostrils, lips, hands, and feet, praying for forgiveness for any sin committed through sight, hearing, speech, touch, or movement. All of this ritual has a vital purpose, because your deathbed, you believe, is a literal battleground. This is a quirky and deeply held belief of your time. As your body weakens, a swarm of demons, invisible to everyone else, gathers around your palate. They're here for one last assault on your soul. They whisper temptations in your ear. They tempt you to despair, telling you that your sins are too great to be forgiven. They tempt you to pride, urging you to congratulate yourself on a long and pious life. They show you images of your family, tempting you to cling to this world. All the while, you believe angels are also there, urging you to resist, to hold fast to your faith. Your family, praying around you, are your soldiers in this final, desperate spiritual struggle. This intense focus on the soul's final moments has led to a scholarly debate. Historians and theologians still debate the psychological impact of these deathbed rituals. Did the structured process of the Ars Moriendi and the last rites provide genuine spiritual comfort and reduce the fear of death? Or did the intense focus on sin and demonic temptation ultimately heighten the anxiety of the dying? For you, it is simply what must be done. It is the only path you know. Your family gathers close. Dying is a public affair. They are here to pray for you, but also to witness that you are dying a good death, a testament to your faith. You must play your part. You formally forgive anyone who has ever wronged you. You give your final blessing to your children and grandchildren. You must show that you are letting go of the world, which is, after a lifetime of hardship, perhaps not as difficult as the demons imagine. Your breathing becomes a shallow whisper. Your son holds a flickering tallow candle near your face, a symbol of the light of Christ guiding you through the valley of the shadow of death. Your daughter might hold the family's wooden crucifix to your lips. The sounds of the hovel, the crackle of the fire, the shuffling of the cow fade away, replaced by the low murmur of your family's prayers. The pain in your body is a distant echo. All that matters now is your soul, a tiny, flickering flame about to be released into the great, dark wind of eternity. You have done all that you can. You close your eyes. Your last breath leaves your body in the smoky quiet of the hovel. Your family, who have been your constant witnesses, perform the final, gentle tasks. Your eyes are closed by your eldest son. Your jaw is bound shut with a strip of linen. The women of the household wash your worn-out body one last time and dress you not in fine clothes, but in a simple shroud of coarse, homespun cloth. This is the common historical reality of your death. You will have no coffin. A wooden box is a needless extravagance, a waste of precious wood and labor. You will be returned to the earth wrapped only in cloth, as simply as you entered the world. Before you are taken from the home, a few quiet, ancient rituals may be performed. Your wife or son might go out to the small collection of beehives the family keeps. This is where a quirky and poignant tradition known as telling the bees takes place. They will knock gently on each hive and whisper the news that you, the master of the house, have died, and that they have a new master now. It is a belief rooted deep in the earth that the bees are part of the extended family, and if they are not formally informed of a death, they will take offense, stop making honey, abandon their hives, or even die themselves. It is a final, gentle farewell, connecting your departure to the cycles of the natural world you knew so well. Your funeral is a swift and simple affair. There is no long period of lying in state. Your shrouded body is placed upon a wooden board, a bier, and carried on the shoulders of your sons and neighbors. The small procession makes its way from your hovel, past the other huts of the village, to the stone church that has dominated your spiritual life. The priest may say a requiem mass for the repose of your soul, a final prayer to ease your journey through purgatory, for which your family will pay a small fee in beeswax or pennies. Then you are carried out into the churchyard, the God's acre that holds the accumulated dead of generations. You are not laid to rest in a family plot, marked by a stone carved with your name and dates. Such memorials are for the lords and the wealthy merchants. You are buried in an anonymous grave, dug wherever there is space, among the countless other nameless mounds. The priest murmurs the final Latin prayers of committal, dust to dust, and your children throw a handful of cold earth onto your shrouded form. The grave is filled. A simple wooden cross might mark the spot for a season, but it will soon weather and fall. Within a generation, no one will know the exact location of your bones. The ground will be leveled by time and reused for another forgotten soul. Your life, a universe of experience, has vanished with barely a ripple. You are illiterate, so you left no letters, no journal, no written account of your thoughts or feelings. You are poor, so you left no will, no great inheritance, no portrait. The only written record of your 70 years on earth might be a single entry in a manor court roll. your name misspelled by a clerk, noting a fine you paid for letting your pig stray. That is the sum of your historical footprint. You are one of the voiceless millions upon whose backs the grand cathedrals and castles were built, whose unremembered labor fueled the economies of kingdoms, but who were themselves deemed unworthy of remembrance. This profound anonymity is a challenge for those who look back upon your time. Archaeologists and historians still debate the individuality of the medieval peasant. By studying the scant material remains, the worn sole of a leather shoe, the faint scratches on a shard of pottery, the skeletal evidence of a life of toil, can we reconstruct a sense of these forgotten individual lives? Or are they destined to remain a collective, anonymous mass, forever silent? For you, the debate is over. You have faded into the soil of the churchyard, your story dissolving back into the earth. And now, let the image of that lonely, unmarked grave begin to soften and fade. The damp chill of the medieval churchyard dissolves, replaced by the gentle warmth of your own bed, right here, right now. The rough, scratchy texture of the burial shroud gives way to the smooth, soft reality of your own familiar sheets and blankets. The story is over. The hardships, the fears, the unending toil, all of it can now recede into the quiet distance, a half-remembered dream. All of the struggles we have just walked through, the hunger and the cold, the sickness and the sorrow, are part of a world that is long, long gone, a historical landscape that you have just visited from a place of incredible, unimaginable comfort and safety. Feel the weight of your own body, safe and at rest. Listen to the gentle, steady sounds of your own room, perhaps the soft hum of a fan, or the quiet stillness of the night outside your window. There are no marauding soldiers here, no threat of famine, no lord demanding your labor at dawn. There is only peace. There is only the gentle, rhythmic motion of your own breathing, a quiet tide pulling you slowly and deeply into a comfortable, peaceful, and well-deserved sleep. Let go of the journey. The miserable life is over. Yours is just beginning to rest.